Okay, so we're now at the step 1.8 of the conceptual database design step. So in step 1.8, basically we're now at validating the conceptual data model against the user transactions. So if you have no idea ano pa tong user transactions, so later I will show you some examples of what uh, examples of user transactions. So according here, we now have a conceptual data model so that represents the data requirements of the enterprise. So, bali in 1.8 it is assumed that we're already done with creating our conceptual data model, no? And the objective of this step is to check the model to ensure that the model supports the required transactions, no? Kasi importante na itong conceptual data model na to, once we convert this or we transform this into logical data model to physical model, dapat wala lang problema, no? Now, here are examples of user transactions. So, when we say user transactions, if you're familiar with the CRUD, no? Create, read, update, delete. No? So, ito yon, no? And there are different, as I mentioned, yung CRUD is create, read, update, delete. So, basically, we have 4 different uh, types of user transactions. So first is the data entry or inserting data or records to our database. So here's some few examples of uh, user transactions of sa database. So we have here the first one, enter the details for a new property and the owner. So ibig sabihin nito, dapat yung isa sa mga required na transactions is your database or the database should be able to allow the users to enter the details for a new property and the owner. Ganun lang. And for the B, enter the details of a new client. So, dapat din yung database, yung design ng database should allow the users to be able to successfully transact this kind of a transaction requirement, no? Mag-enter siya, mag-insert siya ng details of a new client. And yun. Okay. So next, we have data update and deletion. So kinumbine lang siya, update and also delete. No? So in this example here, update, delete the details of a property. So basically, your database or the database in this example should allow the users to successfully update and delete the details of a property dun sa database. Okay? Same also with the other items here. Update, delete the details with the property owner. So, dapat merong property owner na table sa database mo. Dapat meron ding property doon sa database mo para maka-update and delete yung user. Kasi kung wala to, ano man daw yung i-update o i-delete niya, di ba? So, yun. And then, last is data query. So, when you say data query, you are retrieving and you are getting information, database data, no? Kumukuha ka ng data from the database. And some examples of data that example nato, no, in this scenario, in this case, na according to sa database na nila, no, yung required nila nga transaction is kailangan the user should be able to list the details of staff supervised by a named supervisor at the branch, and also they should be able to retrieve the list of details of all assistants that are sorted or alphabetically by name at the branch. Ayun. So yun nga, transaction requirements, it falls under data query, data update, data deletion, and data entry or insert. And yun. Now, again, it is important that your database design should be able, once it's converted to physical, from the conceptual to the logical and to the physical design, dapat your users should be able to successfully operate these transactions nila. So using the model, pertaining to the conceptual model, we attempt to perform the operations manually. So if we can resolve all the transactions in this way, let's say lahat ng we have already checked all transactions, if kaya ba, magagawa ba, posible ba no sa conceptual model natin. So, ibig sabihin lang yan, no, we have checked that the conceptual data model supports the required transactions. So, supported. Kayang masupport ng conceptual data model natin yung required transactions. So, which means okay na siya. Pero kung unable to perform, so yun, may problema. No? There must be a problem with the data model which must be resolved. So in this case, it's likely that we have omitted an entity. Posibleng meron tayong nakaligtaan or meron tayong natanggal na entity, relationship, or attribute from the data model. So, yeah. Okay, so we examined the two possible approaches to ensuring the conceptual data model supports the required transactions. So first is describing the transactions, and the second is using the transaction pathways. And here is the conceptual data model. Tapos, later no, we'll get into this. Bakit may mga arrows dito. No? This is for the transaction pathways sa second approach. No? Now, first approach is describing the transaction. So using the first approach, we check that all the information. Now take note, this is the keyword right here. We check. I-check natin that all the information, when you say information, entities, relationship, and their attributes required is provided by the model or supported, no? And by documenting a description of each transaction requirements. Anyway, let's have an example for this one. So list the details of properties managed by a name, member of staff at the branch. So, for example, ito yung transaction requirement that we're trying to test if posible ba, magagawa ba nito ng conceptual model natin. So, how do we check? No? Kasi according to we check ba. So, i-check natin yung entities, relationships, and the attributes. So, first, ano ba yung mga entities na kailangan dito, no? We have here the following properties, the staff, and the branch. Okay, so let's check if yung properties tsaka yung staff meron ba, tsaka yung branch. So yes, we have the staff right here, and we also have the walang branch kasi ano pa kasi ito, partial pa lang kasi itong conceptual design. So, hindi sinali. It's in a different user view. No? Yung branch. So, anyway, but, however, meron yung properties for rent. Staff and properties for rent. It's right here. Perhaps once the other user view will be combined with this current user view na to. So, masasali na yung branch na. But, yeah. So, meron. Yeah, this one is okay. Check. Wala pa to so far. Sige lang. And, details. Details of the properties. Etong details, this is a attribute to. Attribute to siya. And then, name, member of staff. This is also an attribute. Then, attribute to siya. And this one here is relationship. No. Remember that a pag sinabing relationship, no, in finding relationships, you just find verbs or verb phrase. And in this case, this is a verb, so this is a relation. So which means that there's a relationship between the properties and the staff. So let's check now if this relationship exists. So yeah, staff manages. So clearly, as you can see, my line, there's a direct line that connects these two entities. And tapos yung pangalan ng relationship is manages. So yeah, check. By the way, wala dito kasi ito kasing diagram na to, hindi sinali yung mga other attributes kasi magiging ano na siya, magiging magulo tingnan, no? So, kaya nga merong if you cannot check it in the diagram, here the diagram, you can use the data dictionary to check the list, yung full list of attributes for each entity. And in this case, ito kasi since there's a lot of entities involved, so to make it simpler, no, sinari lang yung mga the primary keys nito, tsaka yung mga relationship attributes. Anyway, this one is supposed to be it's also existing, itong attributes na to, tsaka yung attributes nito. And details, attributes, nasa properties yan. Yung name, attribute is at the staff also. So yeah, all of these, na-check natin, no, according here. Entities, relationships, attributes, they are provided or supported by our model. So na-verify natin yan. So therefore, okay, this one is check. Pwede, kayang this transaction is possible with our current conceptual data model, no? So according here, no, the details of properties are held in the property for rent entity, and the details of staff who manage the properties are held in the staff entity. So yeah, as what I mentioned a while, no. So in this case, we can use the staff manager's property for rent relationship to produce the required list. So therefore, yun nga, this is possible. This transaction will be successful. Excuse me. So next, we have the using transaction pathways. So if you're familiar with what we did with the first lesson sa mga traps, yung fan trap and chasm traps, parang ganon din, you know. Basically, we're tracing a certain path, no, from one entity to another. So the second approach to validating the data model against the required transactions involves diagrammatically representing the pathways taken by each transaction directly on the AR diagram. So here, nasa na yun? So yung sinasabi niyang diagrammatically representing the pathway, eto yun. So, yan, this one. These arrows right here. No, if you can notice, they are numbered they are lettered A, B, C. Kasi this represents the the transactions dun sa query. Let just go back. This one, A, B, C, D. No, this is pertaining yung A, ito yon, and yung B kanina, ito yon. Okay. Anyway, we'll break this down. No. Mamaya, no. Yeah, ito yung example. But, yeah, ito na. So, again, using transaction pathways, an example query transaction here is list the details of properties managed by a named member of staff at a branch. So, if you're going to analyze this statement or this transaction, so yung hinihingi nila is details, detalye the properties managed by a named member of staff. So, dapat, no, in order for us to identify or get the details of the properties, kailangan natin munang ma-retrieve muna yung mga stuff, no? And let's say for example, we have here yun nga, a named member of staff, no? So for example, magke-query tayo and we're going to, yung pangalan ng staff na yun is Pulano. Let's say yung name member ng staff is si Pulano. So first, 'di ba, in querying, magki-query muna tayo. Magki-query muna tayo kung if this Pulano staff is existing dito sa staff na to. So if yes, after that is we're going to retrieve its ID. Let's say for example, yung ID niya is 001. ID ni Pulano is 1. And for that, no, according here, list the details of properties, no, managed by staff. So which mean, ibig sabihin nito, yung staff has a relationship na sa property na entity. Now, this is an entity. Okay, entity din to. Take note, no? And managed by, so which means staff has a relationship between the properties. So yeah, as you can see in this diagram natin. So yeah, as you can see, there is a direct connection between the staff and the property for it. May arrow din, no? To designate the direction. Kasi yun nga, magsa-start tayo sa pag-query sa staff. Di ba? Let's say for example, si Polano nga yung hinahanap natin. We get its ano yung corresponding ID niya. So dapat somewhere, dapat dito sa properties na entity na to, it should have a staff ID nito, no? Anyway, if this may not make sense to you, once we get into the logical database design, makakuha ka. Pero I guess ang madaling paraan lang to check, no, using transaction pathways is to check mo lang if ano yung mga entities dito. So the entities are staff, properties, and then you just make sure if meron mas lang relationship, direct or indirect relationship. And since yeah, there really is a direct relationship, kasi yung staff tsaka yung property for it, there is a relationship there, and they're represented by a line, no, that connects the two entities. So therefore, this is possible. Okay, and next, list details of staff by a named supervisor at a branch. So the following, in this example, yung entities na involved dito is the staff and the supervisor. And let's just check if there is a direct or indirect relationship. So yeah, there is. No. Yung pangalan ng relationship like supervises. No? Yeah, as on here. So yeah, that's therefore this is also possible. So this approach allows the designer to visualize areas of the model that are not required by transactions and those areas that are critical to transactions. No? So we are therefore in a position to directly review the support provided by the conceptual data model for the transactions required. If there are areas of the model that do not appear to be used by any transactions, let's say if you have, let me explain this one, much detailed. So for example, balik tayo sa mga transactions natin. So let's say for example, na-check mo na to, okay na to, okay na to, okay na to, and then okay na to, okay na to, okay, okay, okay na to, okay na to, and then let's say you're done validating all these user transactions if they can be made successfully with our model. And if, let's say, for example, upon checking you, asa na yun? Ayan, okay. Let's say, going back to your, once you have reviewed your user transactions and you went back to your conceptual data model, if meron kang manotice na mga relationships that are not supposed to be there, na hindi na mention, let's say for example, not uh, asan ba yung, eto, for example, eto, hindi siya hindi siya na identified. There are no transactions that involves these two, no? Unlike itong iba na to, meron, 'di ba? Meron ito, meron, yeah, meron ito. Even this one ito. Hindi. Meron pala. Ito. Client and preference meron. So let's say for example, ito no. Wala siya, hindi siya na currently there are no transactions that involves querying, inserting, or updating, deleting owner to private owner, business owner. So I guess we could disregard this one. So going back, no, ano mangyari sa mga relationships na hindi naman do not appeared to be used, no, by any transactions. So yun nga, we may question, no, we may question the purpose of representing this information in the data model. So on the other hand, if there are areas of the model that are inadequate in providing the correct pathway for a transaction, let's say you have identified some fan traps and chasm traps. So yun, we need to investigate the possibility that critical entities, relationships, or attributes have been missed. So that's why, if that's the case, you need to edit or make changes to your conceptual model. So before we're now at the step 1.9, which is to review the conceptual data model with the user. So before completing step 1, we reviewed the conceptual data model with the user. So when I say user, this could be the users of the database, the users of the application, or their client, your business client of their enterprise. So the conceptual data model includes the entity relationship diagram and the supporting documentation. This is pertaining to the data dictionary, no, that describes the data model. If any anomalies, no, problems, no, are present in the data model, we must make the appropriate changes, which may require repeating the previous steps. So balik ka naman sa 1.1, 1.2 ba yan, or 1.3, or whatsoever. We repeat this process until the user is prepared to sign off the model as being the true representation of the part of the enterprise that we are modeling. So at the end of the step talaga, before ka ma-end sa first step, no, kailangan munang si user mo mismo yung may final go signal ng pag okay siya, okay na. We proceed with the next phase of the database design. If hindi, you need to repeat the other steps. Let's say 1.1 ba yan, 1.2, 1.3, or so on and so forth. And I guess that ends this video lecture about the conceptual data base design. And in the next video, I'm going to discuss the next phase, which is the logical database design. And thank you for watching and listening. See you in the next videos. Goodbye.